Hello and welcome to the final bell. Great to have you with us for another week. We are brought to you by Panther Tyres, as we are every single week. We're creeping closer to round 2 of AFL footy resuming Thursday night next week. Richmond taking on Collingwood, but the big one, of course, is Geelong and the Hawks on the Friday night. We've got plenty to talk about today. Simon Lloyd, the GM of footy, is going to join us a little bit later on, as is Tim Ludeman. Former BBL cricketer, former coach of the Geelong Cats in the Premier League cricket, Warrnambool boy and big Cats fan. We're going to have a little bit of fun with him as well. We'll get to your questions. We're going to talk plenty of things, but first of all, welcome a man who's with us every single week, Scotty Gullan. Welcome to you.
Hello, Cameron.
Great to have you with us, Scotty. You're all set to go we're getting closer to footy, so I know that you're getting very, very excited. The other man I want to welcome is the bloke who is always with us, but what an opportune time to talk to this man, Mathew Stokes. Welcome to you, Stokesy.
Thanks, Ling.
Just at the moment, Stokesy, obviously last week was National Reconciliation Week, and you spoke so beautifully on last week's podcast about what that means to you and to the Indigenous people right across Australia. However, now we're seeing some really sad, horrible, horrific scenes in America, and what's going on in there is scary. It's confronting. It's everything. But back here, Chad Wingard, Buddy Franklin, a few players, Sean Burgoyne, have weighed in not only what's going on in America, but also shining a light on what happens here in Australia. Can I get your reaction to perhaps what some of those guys have said and also what's going on at the moment?
Yeah, I think obviously it's been horrible to watch the events unfolding over in the US. And I think a lot of it is about what's happening over there, when really, and in reality, it happens here every day. I think since 1991, I think there's probably been about 400 deaths of Indigenous people in police custody. So it's not just happening abroad; it's happening here on our own soil. So I think the players probably just want to bring that to the stats, and it's happening here to the forefront of people's minds and thinking. And I love that people are taking a stand and showing an interest, black and white, on this topic. It's not easy, and it's definitely not something that you can solve overnight. But coming together, which is what reconciliation is all about, it's a good start.
And that coming together, as you said, is important, because the bit that makes me sad, more so in America at the moment, is you've got these people really protesting in the right way, peacefully, being as strong as they can in their voice and just demanding that change needs to happen. You know, enough's enough. You've got this small group who almost want to overshadow that by turning it really violent and taking it away from what the message is, and us against them, and it becomes, that's the story that's covered so thoroughly by sections of the media, rather than actually focusing on the key message of bringing people together and that reconciliation. So what you're saying is spot on. I loved, Stokesy, during the week on the Cats website, some of the stuff that you did with Karina, speaking about the local area and what it means to you, and speaking about the Wadawurrung people. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about some of that? They can check it out on the Cats website, but what have you been doing there?
I think it's just really important that we understand where we're from. I wasn't born here, but I've been here now for 16 years. So making sure that you pay your respects to the people who were here first. And, me and Karina have been able to create a lovely friendship that we've had over 16 years of being able to bring you along this journey and understand what happened here in Geelong. So it goes all the way, Wadawurrung people the borders go all the way up to Ballarat, and we've done a lot of work in that space over probably the last 16 years to make sure that we're doing our part to bring everyone together. But the week was just about just showing the beautiful aspects and the respect that you should have, not only for the land and the people that were here first, but each other, which is most important, black and white. So it was beautiful to be able to share some moments there with Karina and do the filming last week.
Well done, Stokes. You did a great job of it. Fantastic. Scotty, just moving on from that, you've been writing, or your paper, I've noticed, the Herald Sun, involved in writing some really good articles about some acknowledgements of some wonderful footballers and contributors over the history of the AFL Hall of Fame week. John Kennedy Sr. elevated to legend status. and some really high-quality people getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Lenny Hayes, Dean Cox, Big John Brown, Simon Black, one of the greatest blokes to ever meet in football circles, Greg Phillips.
There's more to come, yeah.
Now known as the father of Aaron Phillips. He's played 400-odd games of senior football across the SAMFL and the AFL and the VFL. But Aaron's taken all the limelight now. But wonderful inductees into that Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, it's normally it's the best night of football for the year, actually. We've all been to a lot of these functions, but the Hall of Fame dinner is the one all the ex-players love getting back to. And John Kennedy Sr., I think the biggest surprise was why wasn't he already in it? There was this great debate in the lead-up, Gary Sr., Wayne Carey. How John Kennedy Sr. wasn't already in it as a legend was surprising. So obviously that makes sense. And yeah,
there's
Brown.
a ratio, isn't there, Scotty, where X amount of people have got to be into the Hall of Fame before they elevate their next legend. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a gap. I think it's 3 or 4 or 5 years. Yeah, they don't do it every year, a legend, obviously. So, I mean, couldn't have more fitting. I mean, we were too young to see him when he was coaching in his prime, but we know all the legend about him, and his grandson's still playing. So the Kennedy name is so synonymous with our game. So that's a big tick. And obviously the Brisbane cartel, Jay Brown's the latest, Black, Voss, they're all in there lapping. So it's a great night and a great reward for some amazing players.
And pretty soon, Stokesy, we're about to have, in the years to come, the avalanche of our old mates. I'd imagine quite a few of those will be elevated into the Hall of Fame, and quite rightly so.
5 years retired. When did you retire? Oh, well, you're
I'm long gone, Scotland, long gone.
Stoker, when was your last year at Essendon?
Come on, mate. Come on now. Let's not get carried away here, Scotty.
I'm assuming an avalanche of Bartel, Johnson, when they eventually retire, obviously
Scarlett's in,
Selwood, Ablett. Enright's been now retired a couple of years, so he's getting closer. I wonder if Joel Corey. I mean, I look at Joel Corey and Lenny Hayes on the same level.
Yeah.
I'm probably missing a few of our old teammates.
It'll be the same as what happened with Brisbane. Your team of 7, 9, 11, you'll get half a dozen in there easily.
Yeah, let's hope so. Speaking of the Cats, we are getting closer to that round 2 clash, should I say, against the Hawks. I'm reliably told, Stokesy, that the list is very, very healthy. All of those little sore spots, I think Kolajasny will probably be right to go. I think Lockie Fogarty has been training well and may not play in that game, but is certainly getting closer. I'm even told Nakia Cockatoo's been complete. Pretty well.
Stop it.
Both of you shake your heads at me. But in all seriousness,
he's going to play next week. Is that what you're telling me?
No. And we're going to ask Simon Lloyd a bit later on what the go is for those players who don't play, how they're going to get some match practice. But Stokesy, is that correct? The list is very healthy at the moment.
Well, what this break has been able to do is give the guys who have had interrupted pre-seasons time to catch up. And we had a fair few players in the off-season have a bit of a break, and whether it's through injury this year or last year. So to be able to have that time up your sleeve to be able to get them right, Kolajasny, Parford, you talk about Cockatoo, even Stefan Ockenberg was the Irish recruit. He was no chance of playing this year, and all of a sudden now he might be a chance to be able to sneak in a few games at the back end of the year. So it's given the list a bit of time to reset itself and be able to hit the second part of the season, which is only the first part of the season, hit the ground running.
As they fight for 21 spots in the team because Chuka Constable's already got one locked away. Scotland?
Wow, I can't wait. What are they playing Friday? So Thursday night we'll get the team sheet. Wow, if Chuka's not there, you might not show up.
I expect some messages from you, Scotty, if it doesn't go that way.
I think Mitch Duncan spoke Stokesy during the week. I mean, him and Sal played round 1 but had virtually no pre-season. They both played really well. But have another 8 weeks of training, even by themselves for that period, that's just going to be massive for the Cats.
Absolutely. I mean, to be able to have that break, I mean, and they were always in danger of being able to overdo themselves. They work hard and great trainers. So being underdone was never a problem. Probably the longevity of the season would have got to them eventually. And to be able to have this break now and and be able to get their body to reset. I mean, it's perfect for Geelong sports that we have our best players on the park.
Absolutely. It is, as I said, a little bit later on, Simon Lloyd's going to be chatting with us. So we will ask Lloydie about all of those players, how training's going, the matches that might be happening outside of the AFL clashes to keep those players fit. But let's get to a couple of the listener questions before we take a break. And Tim Ludeman's going to be coming up in just a second. Stokesy, this bring back some nasty memories for you. This question, this is from Timmy. What's the hardest preseason drill or punishment that you've ever done?
Ooh.
Have you locked anyway deep in the recesses of your mind and so trying to forget that and don't ever want to think of preseason again?
Yeah, there was definitely one. I remember we did we've got this repeat effort test. I think it was Scotty, it would have been 2013, and we already done it. It only takes about 3 or 4 minutes to do it, and Scotty got pumped up, and we must have been a bit excited. We weren't training great, and he goes, "Oh, you want to do it again?" And we've all gone, "Yeah." And all of a sudden, we're going to do it again, and we had to do it again, and it was hell. And we done it 2K twice, I reckon, down at Western Gardens or Eastern Gardens. I think Bomber.
Yep.
And Bomber wasn't happy with a few of the guys' runs. So whenever you have to repeat something, it's never a nice thing, and especially when the coaches are watching. I mean, if it comes from the fitness guys, you can kind of give them shit, but when the coaches...
I remember back in the earlier days, before we had a little bit, this is way back right at the start of my career, before we had a bit more sensitivity about perhaps the environmental impact that we might have, we were doing the sand dune runs.
Yeah.
And down near Brimley.
Brimley one, yeah, I've done it before, yep.
Yeah, Brad Otten's neck of the woods. And I remember doing it and just doing it again and again and again. And Paul Chapman can still clearly visualize the vomit hitting the sand and just splashing everywhere and just in such agony, and then having to get up and basically run through the middle of the mess that he'd made. There were blokes throwing up left, right, and centre at that session, and I've tried to forget that one as best I can, but that was pure pain there. Fun times. That one's from Timmy. Thank you for that, Timmy. Stephen asks, what's the hardest part going from a fringe player to being picked in the 22 each week?
So you were the plump full forward, Cameron, remember?
Oh, stop it. I think it's...
And then you became the greatest tag in the history of the game.
The hardest part for me is the realisation that you've got to take responsibility for your performance every single week, across the consistency across every quarter. You know, you're not just this young kid getting a couple of games and, you know, if you do one nice thing, great. It was, no, we need you contributing right across the game. So the concentration levels had to be spot on. You had to be really present in every moment on the field and aware of structures and setups and what your job was and what all of that information through your head and keeping locked on to what the game needed you to be. I found that the challenge. But as I sort of felt more comfortable in that role, then that started to flow naturally. What about you, Stokesy?
Yeah, I think for me, it was always about just knowing your role and playing that and being happy with that. I mean, a lot of guys who play as a small forward probably want to play as a midfield, and you know, there's always about, you know, wanting the ball in your hands the most and being able to do the most with it. With our team and that, it was actually just an absolute privilege to be able to play in the team. So for me, your role was here to tackle and put pressure on, and if you do that, you'll play every week. So my focus was always on making sure that I was the ultimate team player, because I knew that was going to get me a game every week. So it was just an honour to play. And once I got a little bit older, I wanted to play a little bit more in the midfield. But early in my career, for the first 5 or 6 years, I was just happy playing in the midfield in the forward line, because you guys got down there a fair bit. So there's not too much to complain about.
Stokesy, you would have played on the edge a fair bit, wouldn't you? Yeah, your first few years, thinking, oh, God, if I don't do this, I'll get dropped. How long was it till you've thought, no, I'm a legitimate, you know, long-term member of this team?
Yeah, I think even when I made the All-Star team in 2008, I was having probably my best year. Even through that year, I was always thought I wasn't too far away from playing VFL footy. I think that was what drove me as well. And also too, we had some great competition in Burnsy and Travis Barker. We always pushed each other during training, and we always knew that if we messed up or we didn't play well, that they would happily take your spot. So probably wasn't until later on that I, probably 2011, 12, where I became comfortable that I'm part of the team and I'll play every week as long as I get a kick. And I think everyone does it. I even think the superstars still worry about it when they get a little bit older. So.
That little couple of percent of fear of competition for places, fear of failure, whatever it might be, that's important. I reckon it just drives you. It doesn't allow you to become complacent. Yes, you want to be comfortable and feel like you're part of that team, and ultimately you're contributing really importantly to that team. But a little tiny element of uncomfortableness and competitiveness and fear of failure is not a bad thing. I think it drives you to an even higher standard. We better take a break. Thank you to all those people who sent in questions. Just before we do, as I say every week, we really appreciate the support of so many of our sponsors. Panther Tyres, big sponsor of this podcast, but also GMHBA have come on board and appreciate their ongoing support of the club. The GMHBA Stadium obviously is a big one, but they've helped out with this podcast as well. And their message through this time is it's important to stay healthy while staying at home. That's why GMHBA have partnered with Keezer. A number of the boys do Keezer. I do it as well to look after my back, keep it strong. If you're a GMHBA member with extras cover, you can access telehealth or in-centre physio from the team at Keezer with no out-of-pocket expenses up to your annual limits until September 30. Waiting periods and sub-limits apply. Search GMHBA Keezer for details and stay healthier at home. So big thanks to GMHBA and Keezer. Let's take a break. Back in a second. Welcome back to the final bell, brought to you by Panther Tyres. It is great to have you with us. And as promised, Tim Ludeman is going to join us. Now, Scotty Gullan and Mathew Stokes last week, they were pushing for the fact that he wasn't allowed back on because he dared not be available last week. And Scotty, you were saying one shot only on this, the highest rating podcast in all of Newtown.
It's a very risky strategy, Cameron, to snub us. We look what we did to a current player in Zach Tui. We got rid of him, so we're pretty powerful trio.
Well, the word was that Mathew Stokes did most of that knifing of Zach Tui and just got him moved on and took his position very nicely. But jokes aside, it is a warm welcome to a man who is a big Cats fan, I am told. Grew up in Warrnambool, obviously played cricket in SA for the Strikers and for the Renegades as well, more importantly. Aaron Finch's mob, Scotty. Tim Ludeman, welcome to the final bell.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. You're rocking the Boston Red Sox hat there. So that straight away gets you in the good books here. Scotty Gullan, a massive Boston fan.
That's probably more because I'm follically challenged and it's a bit cold at the moment, to be honest.
You am I right? You're retired now as a cricketer. You've hung up the whites. What are you doing with yourself?
I wouldn't say I'm retired. I've finished up sort of at Premier level and obviously at BBL level, but I might pop up locally in the GCA, maybe Lingy, and give you a run for your money, but we'll wait and see.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I like the sound of that.
It's a cashy like you, Cameron. He's on the cashy train. Like you are.
And he's right. Tim's right. I got that wrong. Cricketers never retire. We just slowly go gracefully into the sunset. But any little whispers, can you give us a scoop? Who are you lining up for? Can I get you to St. Joey's?
No, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if I'll play. I might play, or I might just go fishing. I'm undecided, so I do love my fishing. So I might hop into that. We'll see.
Very nice. Well, we did mention you grew up in Warrnambool and a Cats supporter. Before the guys get to some questions about cricket, a Warrnambool boy did well during the week. I mean, he did well throughout his entire career. Jonathan Brown, inducted into the Hall of Fame. Did you know Brownie, grow up with Brownie? Or did you have any connection with Brownie at your time in Warrnambool?
No, I didn't. No. I'd met him a few times before, but he was sort of my brother's age. He's a bit older than me. But obviously followed his progress and actually had him on my own podcast a couple of weeks ago. He was brilliant. But he's a good man, Brownie, and good to see. Good reward for a great career.
Now, why the love of the Cats? We'll get through that one first, Timmy. Warrnambool.
Yeah, I grew up in grew up in Naranda, so sort of out near Boggy Creek, which is Paul Couch territory. So my old man played a lot of footy, junior footy in particular, with Paul Couch. So I didn't really have a choice. So he was a good family friend of ours, and I was always going to be a Geelong supporter from that moment, I suppose.
And favourite players, we've got to get that out of the way. I mean, you grew up watching a couple of these young men. I mean, who was your favourite player even before their era?
I always had seniors number on my back, probably because every kid did. But I must admit, I was very fond of Peter Riccardi. He was probably one of my favourite players.
The Rolls Royce on the wing.
Brilliant player. The goal after the siren against Carlton.
It was touched, you know.
Scotty, it was not touched.
It was touched. Let's reveal now to the world it was touched.
It's carried 75 metres. How could it be touched?
It went off the bloke's head.
I remember the relief from that game, because what's forgotten is we had a very handy lead in that game, and we pretty much threw the game away. And I was petrified of going into the rooms that we were going to cop the greatest spray in history off Bomber Thompson. And Rico's nailed that final goal. And the relief was that Bomber's still probably going to yell at us for blowing the lead, but at least he's going to do it with a smile on his face. So big thanks to Rico there. Let's go to your cricket career, can we, quickly? BBL, what a phenomenon that became and is, and the excitement that got kids back involved in cricket. How fun was it in the formative years of it, and over the last few years, how big it's become for people involved back in cricket?
Yeah, it's been amazing to see. Obviously, you get the big crowds in AFL, but for a domestic cricket competition to have, I think at Adelaide Oval, the Strikers, we probably averaged about 42,000 a game. So to have that sort of following to a domestic cricket match is unbelievable, and it's probably something that hasn't happened for a very long time. So the bubble that's been created with the Big Bash is, it's great to be a part of. And, you roll up to a Shield game and there's 4 blokes and a dog, and then you roll up to the Big Bash game and there's 40,000. It's unbelievable, really.
We know that what's going on in the AFL industry at the moment, Timmy, with cuts everywhere, left, right and centre. What's the impact on cricket being at the moment?
Yeah, I haven't followed it too closely, but I've read a few things about Cricket Victoria. I think they probably lost about 50 to 60 staff and things like that, mainly out of probably game development. I think that's taken a bit of a hit. So the structure in our pathway system for junior players coming through has changed significantly. So it'll be interesting to see the flow-on effect in cricket with that happening, because obviously they got it to a state where the pathway system, pretty much no one snuck through the cracks, I guess, as a talent. We're now, I suppose, they're opening themselves up to possibly missing a few. So it'll be interesting to see if there is a flow-on effect and whether that does affect cricket.
One they definitely missed, though, Stokesy, over the years was Stevie Nichols. Now, for our listeners who don't know, Stevie's a very important member of the Cats footy department, has been for a long time. I reckon, Stokesy, it was about 2007 he came on board. So he's been part of the journey for a long, long time. Tim, I'm told that Stevie bowls heat. He's been telling everyone within the footy department that he's the quickest bowler in Australia and, could have done this and could have done that. Just set the record straight, please. How good was he and how quick was he really?
To be honest, I haven't played against him, so I'm not sure. But
you're looking after him.
He did do a bit of work for the Renegades. I'm not sure if people are meant to know that, but he did come in, and he didn't pick up the ball and have a bowl in the nets, but he was always there and thereabouts, fielding and catching balls and getting in people's faces, just letting everyone know that he's got a bit of talent in the cricket area. So,
is he one of these blokes who just lets this myth continue to swirl around, but never actually picks up the ball and sends one down?
I think so. Very non-committal in that area.
Very smart. Very smart.
Timmy, you would have played with a lot of greats and internationals in Australia. I mean, can you give us your top 3 most interesting characters that you've crossed in the cricket world?
Oh, that's a good question. 3 interesting characters. Probably Shahid Afridi was pretty interesting. He played with us at the Adelaide, I suppose, Redbacks before it became the Strikers. He got done for chewing the ball in one of our games. So he was quite unique.
It's okay to chew the ball. You can't use sandpaper, but chewing's fine.
Who else? The West Indians are always good fun. Dwayne Bravo, Kyron Pollard, those sort of guys. They're always life of the party and all their bling.
Wasn't there preparation? Didn't Bravo just not even train, no interest, just would trot up at the time and be incredible?
It's probably not the whole truth. He did.
That's a journalist for you, Timmy.
He did run to the beat of his own drum, but he definitely trained hard when he was there and had a crack. Like, he's a world class athlete, performs in all the big stages, so you don't get away with doing that. So yeah, he certainly trained hard when he had to.
You had one of the great characters on your podcast just recently too, I believe. You mentioned Jonathan Brown, but also Shane Warne. What's any little stories about Warnie for us? What's he like as a character?
I don't know him real well, to be honest. Darren Berry got him on, who was on our podcast, but he probably let a few things out of the bag which we haven't heard before. He was, I don't know. I suppose he's just a lovable larrikin, isn't he? Like what you see is what you get with Warnie. So yeah.
We see a lot of the footy players who, obviously, the crowds and the interactions with the supporters and the lip. One thing that's really intrigued me watching cricket over the last few years is how much talk goes out there. Can you give us a couple of good sledges and maybe who they're from, or maybe just in the vicinity of who they are? I've always been real curious about how you sledge people on the cricket court or field. Sorry.
Yeah, I reckon when I first started, it was probably quite not nasty, but it was narky, and it was pretty heated. But in recent times, with everyone playing together in BBL, different franchises, things like that, it's become a bit more clever sledging, I suppose. I can't think of it, or not that probably can be repeated off the top of my head, but one that springs to mind was probably just having a little chat in the middle during a Big Bash game with Chris Gale. So up until a period of time, I held the fastest 50 in BBL history. And I was actually playing in a match against the Renegades, and Chris Gale knocked that title off. So I was keeping up to the stumps to a spinner, and I thought too good of an opportunity not to say anything. So I said, "Oh, Chris, you broke me record, you bastard." and he goes, "Did I man? How many balls?" I said, 18. He goes, "Oh, did it easy, man." He did it in 12 balls. So
Scotty, very similar to the way I bat when I play.
Wow,
Cameron. Fast, flowing.
We know you haven't been dismissed and you're like Steve Waugh. You just want red ink and your teammates are embarrassed. They try to run you out, my mail is, from Carousel and others. Timmy, but you are, as a keeper, it is your role to yap. So I think you're downplaying your abilities. Is this correct?
I was always a quiet keeper. I try to talk with action. Talk with action.
Do they exist?
I wasn't quiet, but I didn't sledge much, to be honest. Unless it was warranted, I probably wouldn't go down that path.
Who was the best you played with then?
Sledging?
Yeah.
Probably Chad Sayers. He's a little man, small man syndrome, pretty aggressive, fast bowler. Not smart.
Sounds like someone on this podcast, too.
Scotty.
Mathew.
Brilliant.
Very good, Tim. Well, hopefully now with, as you said, not retired, but just winding down of some duties, you do end up playing a bit of cricket locally in Geelong. And obviously one of the other roles too was coach of Geelong in the Premier League. I did forget to mention that one. But you also get plenty of time to watch the Cats play. What do you think the chances are? Be honest, this season 2020, can the Cats pinch a flag?
Geez, I hope so. I'll definitely be supporting pretty hard. I wish I could get to the games. That'd be nice. But anyway, I normally sneak down there with Andrew McDonald, who's a local Geelong boy as well. Yeah, I'm quietly confident.
Very good. Well, hopefully the crowds are allowed in eventually and you can get down and watch them. But we really appreciate you having a chat. All the best for either fishing or some local cricket this year. But continue the great work in the media and on the podcast with Chuck Berry as well. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Great to chat with Tim. We're going to take a break now. GM of footy for the Cats, Simon Lloyd, is coming up. Welcome back. It's great to have you with us on To the Final Bell, brought to you by Panther Tyres. As I say every week, if you need anything sorted with your car, talk to the guys at Panther Tyres. Stokes' experienced it. They came and picked up the car. Stokes, he didn't even leave the couch. I'm just sitting there in his jocks. I'm imagining just watching Netflix.
Oh, I hope you're not imagining that, Cameron.
Being very, very lazy, but his car was delivered back perfectly. Didn't even need to leave the house. So if you need that sort of service, please talk to the guys at Panther Tyres. And so I mentioned the last couple of weeks, Deakin Uni have also come on board, doing great things. Digital is in Deakin University's DNA with 40 years of experience in distance and online learning. Discover why they're the #1 Australian public university for overall educational experience. Get my words out right. Premium, proven, loved. Study online at Deakin. Maybe I'll enrol in a course on how to speak better, Scotty. Might need a little bit of help. I'll try and speak. I'm lost cause, you reckon?
Our producer is doing the ads now, and I see why. So keep going.
Well, I'm going to try and be at my best right now because the jam of footy for the Cats, Simon Lloyd, is joining us. Lloydie, great to have you with us.
Hey, Lingy, Stokesy, Scott. Are you sitting in a Ford at the moment, Scott, are you? Good to see you.
I am in, yes. They've given me a Ford because I'm doing such a good job for the club, and I'm spreading the word, Simon.
Now, we're going to give away Scotty here. He's in his car, also known as his recording studio, waiting to play golf.
Correct.
Basically, we're just wasting his time, and he wants to get out there and have a hit of golf.
No. Well, we did shift the day that I was due to appear, Kevin. So, I've had to adjust, and the golf game will tie in nicely.
Rubbing everyone's noses in it, Scott. We're not allowed to do that.
Oh, yes, of course. That's ridiculous. We're lifting that rule soon, Lloydie, aren't we? Surely.
Boys can't play golf. They can't surf, so which we understand. So the AFL have gone over and above with the guidelines and social distancing, and so far across the competition, everyone's been pretty good.
You're getting your COVID-19 test shortly again. A fun experience. So that is every player, every coach, every member of that 25 football department, is it? Has it twice a week? Is that right?
Yeah. So players twice a week. Rest of the staff are once a week. I'm looking outside my window at the moment, and players are coming out with watering eyes, and it's basically you're probed with a cotton bud, probably the size of my ruler here. And, probably, it's basically goes to places that no cotton bud should go, and leaves the eyes watering, and you take a good couple of hours to get over it. But it shows that we're all committed to the cause, and it's what we have to do.
Well, what you have to do is get the team ready for the round 2 clash against the Hawks. There must be a buzz of excitement in the air now. The uncertainty is gone. The excitement of getting back together and being able to train has no doubt been bubbling along. But we are now within almost a week of that game. Have you sensed it amongst the players, especially some of the senior players? I'm sure that, okay, it's game time now. This is the fun bit.
Yeah, Cam. Definitely the intensity and focus has gone up significantly. Even talking to Mitch Duncan yesterday, Mitch said, "I'm now just counting down the days." He said, "It's just like that." It's so you can really feel it. It's going to be difficult to pick a team as well because they've come back. They've really. It's generally been very pleasing. They've risen to the challenge of whilst they've been away, training in pairs at different times, and that's been well led by the leadership group. They've rotated a lot of younger players through at different times, and but they've come back and they're all in ripping nick. So there's availability is high.
And Mr. Lloyd, obviously it's, getting the players back is one thing, but your staff, I mean, the uncertainty that's out there and journalists, beautiful journalists like Scott Gullan putting out there every day about the cost that are going to have to get cut inside the footy department. How difficult has that been navigating not only the guys that you get back, but also the guys that probably aren't back and trying to navigate that? How difficult has it been for you?
Yeah, Stokes, it's probably been, in my 20 years working in the AFL industry, probably the most difficult thing I've had to work through. It's it's been a challenge. You mentioned the word, it's uncertain. We still, the AFL are doing a good job. They're trying to work through it, but we still don't know what the soft cap is next year. We don't know what list sizes are. The second tier competition is the big one. We don't know what that looks like. The AFL are working diligently through this, but it does, when you're trying to work out and think about structures for, next year and beyond, it's very difficult because really at the moment we've only got half the jigsaw puzzle. It's very hard to structure up how you think it's going to look when you actually haven't got all the accurate information. So we're working through that, and we're trying as hard as we can to be relentless with our communication with staff, and obviously treat everyone with respect and care. But it's a really challenging situation, as it is for a lot of people throughout society at the moment. It's really tough, really, really tough.
Lloydie, with list size, what's your thoughts about next year? I know this year we'll get through and it'll be an asterisk year, but what's the scenario? I mean, we hear 35, we hear many sort of different things. Why do you think, is it just the lack of money is why it will have to come down?
Yeah, that's very much what the AFL have been talking about. It's currently football department expenditure. So you basically have your payments that you pay to players, and then to run a football club with staffing and expenditure, etc. It's 9.7 million currently. So it's a lot of money. But you've got to realise as well, you have AFL, AFLW, VFL, VFLW. So there's a lot of costs to do what we do, but AFL have been talking about how do we actually trim this model, and they have been referring to the new economy. So we're trying to predict what that economy will look like. In regards to list sizes, it's that's something that has been discussed, but still we're no clearer whether it's in the mid-30s or whether it still remains at 46. But that's something that the AFL will need to obviously heavily negotiate with the AFLPA as well.
And is the possibility that beyond this year, all contracts that had been signed for future years could potentially become void, almost have to be renegotiated again in that new economy, as you call it?
Potentially, but that's one that I'm sure the AFL and Paul Marsh at the AFLPA are discussing heavily at the moment. So it's one of those ones where we have weekly meetings as GMs with the AFL. So we're getting regular updates, and they're giving us progress reports in a way. And yeah, that does change. So you're sort of trying to adjust with their changes as well. So it's it's watch this space, Lingy.
With the big game coming up Friday night, Cats taking on the Hawks at GMHBA Stadium, which all of our listeners will be very excited about. But some attention does turn to those players who don't get selected in the 22. And as you mentioned, that second tier competition, the uncertainty around next year, but being non-existent for the remainder of this year, it looks like. What are those players likely going to be doing? There's talk of scratch matches against other clubs, maybe some intra-club footy. What's it looking like for the guys who don't get selected?
Yeah, so the AFL have ticked off this week for clubs to organise match simulation against or training against the team you're coming up against. And look, different teams have different programs. So if we can't get a game against the team we're going to play, we'll try and get a game against somebody else for those unselected players. But the fact of the matter is, this year we're going to have at least 3 5-day turnarounds. So we need to manage our list carefully, and players are going to get opportunities. So whether they're training or whether they're competing in match sim, they need to make sure when their opportunity comes that they've got their hand up, nice and high for selection. So Scotty has said, he said this weeks ago, and I've said it as well, there are going to be opportunities that are presented for different people throughout the year. And you can feel at the moment it's getting competitive. People now are trying to force their way into senior selection, which is healthy.
That's going to be the biggest challenge, Lloyd, isn't it? To keep those players up and believing that there's still a chance, even if they might end up training rather than playing many games at all.
It will be, Scott. It'll be frustrating for some at times, and so we've got to just make sure that the likes of Shane O'Brien, Sean Grigg, James Raleigh, who will coordinate that part of the program. A lot of us will be there watching every match sim they have or training session they have, and so we'll be watching them closely, and also managing players in and out of the team at different points of time. But it is hard when you're not being able to, you're not knocking down the door for 3 weeks of playing competitive football. But we'll try to simulate that in some way, shape, or form.
Can you get other players in? Still, what's the rule around that? If you end up in a situation where you're going to play a scratch match against, just as an example, the Hawks next week, but you only had 10 fit AFL listed players, which I know you don't. The list is looking very healthy, but if you did, and the Hawks had 18 and could field a full team, are you allowed to go and find 8 other players, or can you just not
putting your hand up,
field a
Cameron?
team?
You don't get back.
Oh, definitely not.
Look, unless you're willing to come in and have the testing today, Cam. Really, at the moment, it's just though we're only allowed a set number of people within the football department, and you have to go through the rigorous testing and screening. We have temperature tests and online assessments around our symptoms, and then obviously the other swabs that are being taken. So it's really limited to that. Look, if there are clubs that are having shorter numbers and injuries, I'm sure that you might find that 3 teams combined to actually get extra numbers at different points. But they're being very, very clear in expectations and numbers. There's only allowed 30 staff here for the game next week, and even on that, so that is everyone is working throughout the day, whether it be in the match simulation or the game. That's all that's allowed within the within GMHBA.
You spoke about the guidelines around players and what they are able to do and can't do. I mean, whose job is it to keep Scotty off the golf course?
Yeah, look, Scotty's been pretty good. It's just making sure the heat room and the sauna's turned off. Matty, he's look. We've got one of our club operations manager, Simon Murphy, has become our compliance officer, and he has look. There's a lot of paperwork and auditing that needs to be done, and we have somebody from the AFL that comes in once a week as well to keep an eye on our processes and help educate us in that space as well. So it's one of the ones where, look, we've still, with our smaller group training sessions during the week, they come in, there's 2 groups that come in at a time. They're in separate change rooms. They go to separate gyms, and they're training at opposite ends of the ground. They train, and then they leave, and then another group comes in. So there's 6 separate groups operating from 6 different parts of the stadium, and we're allowed to come together once a week. So it's challenging, but the boys have embracing the challenge.
We said the list is healthy, Lloyd. How's Jack Stephen progressing? Pretty well, I hear.
He's going well. He's back into full training, and he's desperate to get going again and play. So he'll start to be introduced to the competitive stuff over the coming sessions. And Jack's, as I've stated publicly, he's very popular amongst the group. He is has he played at St Kilda. He's a hard worker. He leaves everything out there on the park, and he's in a good frame of mind, and he's getting himself ready.
There's been a bit of debate, Lloydie, about how much people need to know about what happened with Jack and how much they don't need to know, and plenty of people have had their say on it. Can you just tell our listeners, the Cats fans, what is the process? Obviously, the AFL, I think, have been involved, and obviously the clubs had those conversations. Does that information become public for people out there, or once the AFL's satisfied, does it stay in-house? How's it work?
Yeah, so it's quite it's a complex process, Lingy. It's there are some media that would like to know within day 1 or 2, but really at that point of time, it's a for us, from the morning I learnt about it on a Sunday morning, very early in the morning. It was a matter of just gathering as much accurate information as we could, and it was a police matter that was under investigation. So we need to be very careful when things are being investigated. Now, Jack has obviously suffered a stab wound, and he's been working closely with and talking to police, and so he's worked through that process, and we've been in constant communication with the AFL as well. So I'm sure at some stage, at the right time, the AFL will put out some sort of statement, and but we need to actually work patiently through the process. So it's not as simple as just stating what happens. It's more complex than that. And also, really, first and foremost, from right through the process, the club has been focused wholly and solely on Jack's health and well-being.
Scotty, have you got any more questions you want to fire at Lloydie before we let him go and get the swab up the nose?
No, well, just with the, you mentioned the team, they're all healthy. You've been pleasantly surprised, Lloydie. Is there going to be, are we going to see any new faces in this round, or is there any players you could say that have put their hand up, the old cliche?
Yeah, Scott, it's going to be an interesting one. We'll sit down over the next day or so and really knuckle down on the team. And probably what you've found is that players that had lingering, I suppose, issues from the 2019 season and through pre-season or compromised pre-seasons, they've had an opportunity to really complete a body of work. So what we're actually seeing at the moment is the likes of Selwood, Duncan, Jake Colajasny is now full training, Parfitt, Menegola, Tommy Stewart, Luke Dalhouse. They've now really got a large body of work under their belt. So in regards to new faces, you will have some younger ones that will put their hands up at different points of time, but look, it's going to be really competitive, which is what we want.
It's going to be a battle to fit in those players into those 21 spots, isn't it? Because as we've established just before, Charlie Constable's got one of those spots, and then the other 21 are available. It's going to be a battle.
Sorry, which member of match committee was that?
It hasn't Nakia Cockatoo got the other spot, so you have 20 spots left.
Stokesy keeps telling me to be patient with Nakia and not carry on too much, so I'm listening to Stokesy.
Yeah, first. Hey, one real quick, Lloydie, before you take off to do your swab. Some of the guys obviously come back with questionable haircuts. Facial hair, obviously a little bit of isolation got the better of them. You had a beautiful goatee going, and sort of Scotty. When's it now? Focus time. Get ready to get those hair colours out of your hair.
Get the pink hair off.
Beard, and let's get the going. When do you put that down? The hammer down.
Did you ever tip your hair or anything like that, Stokesy?
Wouldn't even think about it. I put glasses on top of my head once and Bomber ripped them off.
I think your good mate Moons did all sorts of things with his hair at different times, I think. We've had look, there's some new nicknames. I know like Sog's now called Krusty after Krusty the Simpsons, and I think Quinton Narkle's gone back. He's reverted to normal now, but I think it's just I think different times. I think it's been through boredom more than anything, but they're pretty busy now.
Well, Lloydie, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck for next Friday night when we're all excited to get the season rolling again. I know you've got some huge challenges coming up, as you said, just sitting there almost waiting for some information too as the year unfolds as to list sizes and everything like that. But you've got some massive challenges, but it's in good hands. Good luck for it all. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, gents.
Thanks, Mr. Lloyd.
Great to have the Jam of Footy of the Cats there. Simon Lloyd with us. We're all excited about that round 2 clash against the Hawks. We'll be back again next week. Scotty, thank you. Stokesy, thank you. Both of you enjoy the week. Enjoy your round of golf, Scotty, and we'll chat again next week.